Section 36 of The Art of Cookery Made Plain and Easy by Hannah Glasse. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 19. To make anchovies, vermicelli, ketchup, vinegar, and to keep artichokes, French beans, etc. To make anchovies. To a peck of sprats, 2 pounds of common salt, 1/4 pound of bay salt, 4 pounds of saltpetre, 2 ounces of sal prunella, 2 pennyworth of cochineal. Pound all in a mortar, put them into a stone pot, a row of sprats, a layer of your compound, and so on to the top alternately. Press them hard down, cover them close, let them stand 6 months, and they will be fit for use. Observe that your sprats be very fresh, and do not wash or wipe them, but just take them as they come out of the water. To pickle smelts, where you have plenty. Take 1/4 peck of smelts, 1/2 ounce of pepper, 1/2 ounce of nutmeg, 1/4 ounce of mace, 1/2 ounce of saltpetre, 1/4 pound of common salt. Beat all very fine. Wash and clean the smelts, gut them, then lay them in rows in a jar, and between every layer of smelts strew the seasoning with 4 or 5 bay leaves. Then boil red wine, and pour over them enough to cover them. Cover them with a plate, and when cold, tie them down close. They exceed anchovies. To make vermicelli. Mix yolks of eggs and flour together in a pretty stiff paste, so as you can work it up cleverly, and roll it as thin as it is possible to roll the paste. Let it dry in the sun. When it is quite dry, with a very sharp knife, cut it as thin as possible, and keep it in a dry place. It will run up like little worms, as vermicelli does, though the best way is to run it through a coarse sieve, whilst the paste is soft. If you want some to be made in haste, dry it by the fire and cut it small. It will dry by the fire in 1/4 hour. This far exceeds what comes from abroad, being fresher. To make ketchup. Take the large flaps of mushrooms gathered dry and bruise them. Put some at the bottom of an earthen pan. Strew some salt over, then mushrooms, then salt, till you have done. Put in 1/2 ounce of cloves and mace, and the like of allspice. Let them stand 6 days. Stir them up every day, then send them to the oven, and bake them gently for 4 hours. Take them out, and strain the liquor through a cloth or fine sieve. To every gallon of liquor add a quart of red wine. If not salt enough, add a little more, a race or 2 of ginger cut small. Boil it till 1 quart is wasted. Strain it into a pan and let it be cold. Pour it from the settlings. Bottle it and cork it tight. Another way to make ketchup. Take the large flaps and salt them as above. Boil the liquor, strain it through a thick flannel bag. To a quart of that liquor, put a quart of stale beer, a large stick of horseradish cut in little slips, 5 or 6 bay leaves, an onion stuck with 20 or 30 cloves, 1/4 ounce of mace, 1/4 ounce of nutmegs beat, 1/4 ounce of black and white pepper, 1/4 ounce of allspice, and 4 or 5 races of ginger. Cover it close and let it simmer very softly till about 1/3 is wasted. Then strain it through a flannel bag. When it is cold, bottle it in pint bottles. Cork it close, and it will keep a great while. The other receipt you have in the chapter for the sea. Artichokes to keep all the year. Boil as many artichokes as you intend to keep. Boil them so as just the leaves will come out. Then pull off all the leaves and choke. Cut them from the strings, lay them on a tin plate, and put them in an oven where tarts are drawn. Let them stand till the oven is heated again. Take them out before the wood is put in, and set them in again after the tarts are drawn. So do till they are as dry as a board. Then put them in a paper bag and hang them in a dry place. You should lay them in warm water 3 or 4 hours before you use them, shifting the water often. Let the last water be boiling hot. They will be very tender and eat as fine as fresh ones. You need not dry all your bottoms at once, as the leaves are good to eat. So boil a dozen at a time and save the bottoms for this use. To keep French beans all the year. Take fine young beans, gather them on a very fine day. Have a large stone jar ready, clean and dry, lay a layer of salt at the bottom, and then a layer of beans, then salt, and then beans, and so on till the jar is full. Cover them with salt, tie a coarse cloth over them, and a board on that, and then a weight to keep it close from all air. Set them in a dry cellar, and when you use them, cover them close again. Wash them you took out very clean, and let them lie in soft water 24 hours, shifting the water often. When you boil them, do not put any salt in the water. The best way of dressing them is, boil them with just the white heart of a small cabbage, then drain them, chop the cabbage, and put both into a saucepan with a piece of butter as big as an egg rolled in flour. Shake a little pepper, put in 1/4 pint of good gravy, let them stew 10 minutes, and then dish them up for a side dish. You may do more or less, just as you please. To keep green peas till Christmas. Take fine young peas, shell them, throw them into boiling water with some salt in, and let them boil 5 or 6 minutes. Throw them into a colander to drain. Then lay a cloth 4 or 5 times double on a table and spread them on. Dry them very well, and have your bottles ready. Fill them and cover them with mutton fat tried. When it is a little cool, fill the necks almost to the top, cork them, tie a bladder and a lath over them, and set them in a cool, dry place. When you use them, boil your water, put in a little salt, some sugar, and a piece of butter. When they are boiled enough, throw them into a sieve to drain. Then put them into a saucepan with a good piece of butter. Keep shaking it round all the time till the butter is melted. Then turn them into a dish and send them to table. Another way to preserve green peas. Gather your peas on a very dry day, when they are neither old nor too young. Shell them and have ready some quart bottles with little mouths, being well dried. Fill the bottles and cork them well. Have ready a pipkin of rosin melted, into which dip the necks of the bottles and set them in a very dry place that is cool. To keep green gooseberries till Christmas. Pick your large green gooseberries on a dry day. Have ready your bottles clean and dry. Fill the bottles and cork them. Set them in a kettle of water up to the neck. Let the water boil very softly till you find the gooseberries are coddled. Take them out and put in the rest of the bottles till all are done. Then have ready some rosin melted in a pipkin. Dip the necks of the bottles in, and that will keep all air from coming at the cork. Keep them in a cold, dry place where no damp is, and they will bake as red as a cherry. You may keep them without scalding, but then the skins will not be so tender, nor bake so fine. To keep red gooseberries. Pick them when full ripe. To each quart of gooseberries, put 1/4 pound of Lisbon sugar, and to each 1/4 pound of sugar, put 1/4 pint of water. Let it boil, then put in your gooseberries, and let them boil softly 2 or 3 minutes. Then pour them into little stone jars. When cold, cover them up, and keep them for use. They make fine pies with little trouble. You may press them through a colander. To a quart of pulp, put 1/2 pound of fine Lisbon sugar. Keep stirring over the fire till both be well mixed and boiled, and pour it into a stone jar. When cold, cover it with white paper, and it makes very pretty tarts or puffs. To keep walnuts all the year. Take a large jar, a layer of sea sand at the bottom, then a layer of walnuts, then sand, then the nuts, and so on till the jar is full. And be sure they do not touch each other in any of the layers. When you would use them, lay them in warm water for an hour, shift the water as it cools. Then rub them dry, and they will peel well and eat sweet. Lemons will keep thus covered better than any other way. Another way to keep lemons. Take the fine large fruit that are quite sound and good, and take a fine pack thread about 1/4 yard long, run it through the hard nib at the end of the lemon. Then tie the string together and hang it on a little hook in an airy, dry place. So do many as you please, but be sure they do not touch one another, nor anything else, but hang as high as you can. Thus you may keep pears, etc., only tying the string to the stalk. To keep white bullace, pear plums, or damsons, etc., for tarts or pies. Gather them when full grown, and just as they begin to turn. Pick all the largest out, save about 2/3 of the fruit. The other third put as much water to as you think will cover the rest. Let them boil and skim them. When the fruit is boiled very soft, then strain it through a coarse hair sieve, and to every quart of this liquor put 1.5 pounds of sugar. Boil it and skim it very well. Then throw in your fruit. Just give them a scald. Take them off the fire, and when cold, put them into bottles with wide mouths. Pour your syrup over them, lay a piece of white paper over them, and cover them with oil. Be sure to take the oil well off when you use them, and do not put them in larger bottles than you think you shall make use of at a time, because all these sorts of fruits spoil with the air. To make vinegar. To every gallon of water put 1 pound of coarse Lisbon sugar, let it boil and keep skimming it as long as the scum rises. Then pour it into tubs, and when it is as cold as beer to work, toast a good toast and rub it over with yeast. Let it work 24 hours. Then have ready a vessel iron hooped and well painted, fixed in a place where the sun has full power, and fix it so as not to have any occasion to move it. When you draw it off, then fill your vessels. Lay a tile on the bung to keep the dust out. Make it in March, and it will be fit to use in June or July. Draw it off into little stone bottles the latter end of June or beginning of July. Let it stand till you want to use it, and it will never foul any more. But when you go to draw it off, and you find it is not sour enough, let it stand a month longer before you draw it off. For pickles to go abroad, use this vinegar alone. But in England you will be obliged, when you pickle, to put 1/2 cold spring water to it, and then it will be full sour with this vinegar. You need not boil unless you please for almost any sort of pickles. It will keep them quite good. It will keep walnuts very fine without boiling, even to go to the Indies. But then do not put water to it. For green pickles, you may pour it scalding hot on 2 or 3 times. All other sort of pickles, you need not boil it. Mushrooms, only wash them clean, dry them, put them into little bottles with a nutmeg just scalded in vinegar and sliced, whilst it is hot, very thin, and a few blades of mace. Then fill up the bottle with the cold vinegar and spring water. Pour the mutton fat tried over it, and tie a bladder and leather over the top. These mushrooms will not be so white, but as finely tasted as if they were just gathered, and a spoonful of this pickle will give sauce a very fine flavour. White walnuts, suckers and onions, and all white pickles do in the same manner after they are ready for the pickle. To fry smelts. Let your smelts be fresh caught, wipe them very dry with a cloth, beat up yolks of eggs and rub over them, strew crumb of bread on. Have some clear dripping boiling in a frying pan and fry them quick of a fine gold colour. Put them on a plate to drain, and then lay them in your dish. Garnish with fried parsley, with plain butter in a cup. To dress whitebait. Take your whitebait fresh caught, and put them in a cloth with a handful of flour, and shake them about till they are separated and quite dry. Have some hog's lard boiling quick. Fry them 2 minutes, drain them, and dish up with plain butter and soy. To roast a pound of butter. Lay it in salt and water 2 or 3 hours, then spit it, and rub it all over with crumbs of bread, with a little grated nutmeg. Lay it to the fire, and as it roasts, baste it with the yolks of 2 eggs, and then with crumbs of bread, all the time it is a-roasting. But have ready a pint of oysters stewed in their own liquor, and lay in the dish under the butter. When the bread has soaked up all the butter, brown the outside and lay it on your oysters. Your fire must be very slow. End of section 36.